Chair. Firstly, I will pass on prayers by the Reverend Lisa. Thank you.
In the power of Spirit and in union with Christ, let us pray to the Father. We pray that your guidance, wisdom and support be upon these individuals as they make decisions today and throughout their time in post. Help them all to make caring decisions that will benefit the local community and enrich the lives of all who live here in Horsham. Give them the strength to stand up for those in need. We pray for cheerfulness and a generous heart on all councillors and officers, that they bring joy to their work and to all that they will meet. May the Lord bless us and keep us from all evil and bring us to everlasting life. Amen.
Amen. Firstly, I have some housekeeping announcements. Please note the locations of the fire exits. Please make sure that your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. This meeting is being live streamed and an audio recording is being made. Please switch your microphone on when addressing the council and off when you have finished speaking. In relation to all points of order, members will need to indicate first the rule and second the way in which it has been broken, as is required by the Constitution. This will enable me to rule accordingly. Please can I remind members to talk to the point and Cabinet members to ensure that their announcements are just that. Moving on now to apologies for absence. We have the following apologies for absence. Councillor Bateman, Councillor Manton, Councillor Trollope, Councillor Utan and Councillor van der Borg. Moving on now to item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of July be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Does anybody wish to comment on the accuracy of the minutes? Thank you. Are you agreed that I may sign the minutes as a correct record? Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 3, declaration of interest from members. Does any member have any interest to declare in respect to any item on tonight's agenda? Thank you. Now moving on to the announcements. Firstly, I have 3 brief announcements as chairman for this evening. Firstly, may I thank all councillors and their families that attended the civic service earlier this month. It was a very uplifting service in which Reverend Lisa Barnett delivered an inspiring sermon on service to the community. I would especially like to thank Councillor Philip Circus and Councillor Len Ellis-Brown for their prayers, and to the Chief Executive, Jane Eaton, for her reading. Secondly, I would like to remind councillors of the Act of Remembrance on the 10th of November in the Carfax. This is a non-religious act in which we come together with residents to remember the sacrifice of all those who have died or been injured in wars and military conflicts. I do hope to see as many of you as possible at this important event. Finally, Leader Martin Boffey and I recently attended the opening of Denham House, which is the new headquarters of the West Sussex Federation of Women's Institutes. Horsham has a very strong WI movement, with 5 branches in the town alone, and with a waiting list of new members. During our visit, the members of the WI told me that the problems of violence against women is a particularly challenging one in West Sussex. It's important that Horsham District Council demonstrates its commitment to address this terrible problem. The WI will be running events in November as part of the White Ribbon campaign, and HDC will be endorsing their work and this campaign. Can I please encourage all male councillors and officers to sign the White Ribbon Pledge, never to commit, condone, or stay silent about violence towards women. Thank you. Leader, do you have announcements?
Thank you, Chairman. I have one announcement. I'm required under the Constitution to report to Council any changes to the memberships of committees or policy development advisory groups. I can therefore report the following changes. Councillor Claire Vickers is to replace Councillor Philip Circus in membership of the Leisure and Culture Policy Development Advisory Group, and Councillor Tony Hogben is to replace Councillor Vickers on the Finance Policy Development Advisory Group. That's all. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buffy. Now move on to Cabinet Member announcements. I believe Councillor Skip, you have an announcement.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm pleased to provide an update on a number of improvements to our play facilities across the Horsham district. New adult fitness equipment has been installed in Bennett's Field, and once the safety inspection is passed, should open by Friday. The improvement in Ostler's View, Billingshurst, has also been completed. And the project saw the existing play facilities, which are aimed at younger children, being refurbished, and the provision of 2 new pieces of equipment for older children. The major refurbishment at Carpenter's Meadow in Pulborough is underway and is due to be complete by the end of the month. And finally, the creation of new play facilities off Leamington Way in Holbrook East are also progressing and should be complete by the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Particularly in view of some of the recent news items on the BBC, I have an announcement about our air quality monitoring stations. One of our annual plan targets was to introduce a mobile air quality monitoring station, and I'm pleased to advise that the new air quality monitoring facilities have been installed at Langhurst Wood Road at the site of the Biffa plant, particularly where the new incinerator will be developed. We have been anticipating the incinerator opening in 2027, and by introducing the air quality monitoring facilities now, we will be able to develop good quality baseline information which will allow any increases as a result of the incinerator to be properly assessed. The data will soon be publicly available online in real time. And as the monitoring equipment has only been installed in the last few weeks, we need to allow some time for testing the data quality before it's made available. I'll ensure that members are advised when this happens, and we will of course promote this to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to Councillor Raby.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware of recent incidents in Horsham Park. Over the last few weeks, there have been 4 separate incidents, which as far as the police can tell are unrelated. However, there has been significant local concern, particularly around the safety of young people. After the second incident that involved college students, I urgently met Inspector Neil Durkin alongside our MP and the Director of Communities, and Neil was able to give us a briefing on the situation. Throughout last week, Neil and Mandy Cunningham, our Community Services Manager, met on a daily basis, and they established a task group to review the park and identified a number of actions. We'll be removing a hedge and some trees, which is towards the pathway that comes through from Colliers, which will clear out that area. It'll make the pathways along to pavilions, improving the lighting, and it'll also make it less enclosed. We're also looking at the feasibility of installing some additional limited lighting where all the paths join together. And the Community Safety Partnership will also consider whether to purchase some additional mobile CCTV, which I'm hopeful we'll be able to do as soon as possible. And we're intending to complete the tree and hedge works during December and January. We'd like to do it sooner, but it's difficult to get the staff to do it, so the delay is getting people on site to do it. And in addition to that, the police have introduced additional patrols in the park, and they're going to continue all the way through to Christmas. And we will continue to work alongside them in partnership on all community safety matters. What I'd like to say is I was in a meeting last week, additionally to this, with all of the heads from various schools and Dan from Colliers, and they were incredibly pleased with the quality of the police response. And they just thought they couldn't have acted more quickly. They've got patrols on the ground, and the biggest deterrent for these kind of events is for there to be consequences, and there were several arrests of people involved in these. And I think that one of the things that's really important that I'd like to share with members is communications and knowing that you can get nonsense going out on social media which blows things up, and it's not, necessarily the full story, and things get blown out of all proportion. But the people in the room with the information felt very reassured, and I felt reassured that actions taken quickly to keep Horsham the safe place that we've all chosen to live and work in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Blackburn?
Thank you, Chairman. The Parish and Neighbourhood Council celebrated 2 years of working together on climate action on the 8th of October, with representatives from 14 parish and neighbourhood councils attending. During this meeting, we heard about how the thermal imaging camera that HDC has can be borrowed and used to see where heat, and thus energy, is being lost in community buildings, and worked on inputting our action plans into One Planet. We also had presentations from Pulborough, Shipley and Southwater regarding progressing their climate action, and it was really inspirational to share the stories, celebrate their progress and see areas for collaboration. I also just want to give a quick summary regarding the Community Climate Fund. We've had our most popular year to date. 27 applications were received, and there are 16 successful projects. The projects are estimated to save a collective total of 70 tonnes of carbon per year. There was a range of applicants from parish councils, museums, men's sheds, community groups, religious groups, charities and schools. Energy projects are particularly popular due to the high potential carbon savings and long-term reduction in energy costs. For instance, Springboard received funding to install solar panels, which were installed in September. They are immediately saving thousands of pounds a year on energy bills, which goes a long way for a small charity who provide essential care. The solar panels are saving approximately 1 tonne of carbon a year, and they are looking to build on their sustainability by installing an EV charging point as well. The Shipley Community Hub received over £2,000 for tools to grow their repair cafe and achieve a fantastic 93% repair success rate. Already, this has helped avoid landfill waste that saves emissions comparable to flying over 8,000 miles. Regarding the future, we're looking to increase transport and water projects. We had some related project ideas shared with the team at last month's volunteer funding fair in Ashington. Previously, Lower Barn allotments were awarded CCF funding to complete a DIY volunteer project to construct rainwater harvesting stations that would save around 27 litres from the mains each year. Sorry about that. This has proved to be a model for action, with Shelley allotments now inquiring about a similar project. The uptake so far this financial year is strong, and we are predicting to spend all of our available budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any other Cabinet members have any announcements? No. Thank you. We will now move on to item questions from the public. There have been no questions from the public. Now moving on to item 6, which is on pages 19, 20 of your packs. The recommendations from Cabinet on the 25th of September. I will hand over to Councillor Baynham, to introduce this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. At the Cabinet meeting of the 25th of September, I presented my report on the Council's financial position for the current year, and I updated our predictions for the medium term up to 2029-2030. Just to recap the main points, in case some of you weren't there or haven't watched the video, well, I'm sure everybody does. We ended 2023-24 with a small but healthy revenue budget surplus, which demonstrated close monitoring and curation of our finances. And I'm pleased to report that our projections for the current year show we are on a trajectory for a fairly similar outturn of another budget surplus. This is very good news. This careful control of our finances is something that I promised in my budget speech last February and that I reiterate today. So all seems well for the immediate future, but challenges do remain for the longer term. While my MTFS paper points to a balanced position for 25-26, it changes to an increasing deficit in the years following, reaching £2.29 million by 2029-30. However, this is an improved position from this time last year, when our projections for 29-30 were for a deficit of £3.23 million. That's almost £1 million more. As always, these predicted figures are based on our best working assumptions, and some are very difficult to know, particularly the level of government funding we will receive under the temporary funding guarantee and the level of compensation we receive for the introduction and running of food waste collection, which begins in March 26. These unknowns mean we will need to continue to plan budgets on a yearly basis as now as the situation unfolds. I am hopeful that we will get longer-term budget settlements from the government or funding settlements, but as yet we just have to wait and see. But it also means that we must achieve a net zero budget for 25-26, and that involves some difficult choices. In preparing this budget, we need to address an existing significant budget gap. Some of this will come from the as yet unknown aforementioned funding guarantee, but we will need to raise a little under £1 million from a combination of efficiency savings and increasing revenue. We recommend as part of this the following. For garden waste, we will increase the annual garden waste collection charge from £54 to £59. This will still remain one of the cheapest such charge in England and Wales, and our neighbouring councils charge considerably more than that, in some cases double. Parking. Roll-up Monday to Saturday rates at council car parks will increase across the board by an average of 9%. This reflects the rise in inflation since they were last revised 2 years ago. There will also be some changes in charging hours at some locations. For Horsham town car parks, Sunday charging will change from the current all-day tariffs to a similar structure as now exists from Monday to Saturday, but at a significantly cheaper rate. There are compelling reasons for this. Firstly, town centre footfall is little different on Sundays as other days of the week, excluding office workers. Almost all shops, hospitality and entertainment conduct their businesses as on other days. Free or cheap rate parking, or cheaper rate parking, or substantially cheaper rate parking on Sunday goes back to bygone days when most customer-facing businesses were closed on Sunday. Secondly, we are out of step with most of our neighbouring councils, who generally charge the same or nearly the same rates on Sundays as on weekdays. And finally, if we were to lose this potential income, which we estimated around £134,000 a year, that's from the Sunday charge increase, we would have to make corresponding cuts elsewhere to non-statutory services. For example, by cutting expenditure on parks and green spaces, or reducing support for community groups by about 50%. So there are really no palatable options, other options. Also included in the paper is a recommendation to remain in the West Sussex business rates pool. All local authorities collect what are officially known as National Non-Domestic Rates, NNDR, on behalf of the government, which is then redistributed as part of settlement funding and wider national spending. For HDC, this collection amounts to about £50 million a year. However, if business rates collection grows above what the government assesses us for, we can keep 40% of the increase. Government get 50% and West Sussex County Council the remaining 10%. But under the business rates pooling scheme, which was first established in 2015, we can reduce the government share, or government take of that increase, by paying the growth dividend into a joint pool with other West Sussex councils. This pool is then jointly administered by the West Sussex Leaders Group, with the aim of funding projects across the country aimed at economic development and regeneration. These can be both strategic and more localised, with the balance on strategic. By the end of the financial year, the pool fund is expected to be around £20.7 million. This pool makes financial sense for HDC, and we therefore recommend to Council that HDC remains in the pooling scheme. So I recommend the recommendations as laid out in the paper. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brankham. Do you wish to speak now or later? Thank you. I will now open up the floor to debate. Councillor Serkis.
Can I just, excuse me, can I just ask you, Chairman, whether your intention is to take a block vote on these recommendations or to take them one at a time? Thank you.
It will depend on whether any alterations are put forward. So if there are no amendments, we will take everything at once. If there are proposed amendments, then we will split the vote accordingly to the original recommendation and any suggested amendments. Proposed amendments. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat the other side of the table where Councillor Bainham is now, and I empathise. It is a difficult challenge to balance a budget. I think Councillor Serkis's question was poignant because some of the four recommendations I feel that I can support, and there's one that I don't feel that I can support. Come to the easy ones first. Golden Waste, we are one of the lowest in West Sussex. It's a competitive service. On balance, there is a need to raise funds, and it makes common sense. Strategically, putting something up 8, 9, 10% does perhaps look slightly bad, but you know, as I said, I could just about justify that as we're the cheapest in West Sussex. The last item, the business rates pool, I briefly spoke to the leader before. It does seem on paper a no-brainer. If we have pooled funds, we get a larger share of the business rates. It does seem logical and practical to do that. I have fears and concerns, and I have had fears and concerns about this particular joint committee for the last few years, that they haven't planned to spend the money, and the money keeps going up and up and up. And I shared those concerns with the leader, and I trust the leader will sort of take my concerns forward to future meetings. But I'm happy to support that particular thing. On the direction that obviously it's reviewed annually, and if we don't see a project plan coming forward for how that money is being spent, I'm sure the leader and the cabinet may give us other advice in subsequent years. Where I have real challenges is the car parking charges. The sweeping statement saying 9%. Again, I can probably live with 9%. Inflation was 7.5% in 2022. 3-4% last year. So I think if you went out for a meal, if you went anywhere and the price had gone up 10%, you'd possibly expect that. However, the Sunday parking charges, I'm afraid I cannot support them. they read very badly, and I'm not sure that the public is going to let us get away with these Sunday charges. We mentioned competitor activity and doing what things other towns do. I don't think they are competitive with other towns. The proposed rate for Perry's Place is significantly higher than that of County Mail in Crawley, one of our neighbouring towns, and we're significantly higher priced than several of our other towns. And I say it reads badly. We can get away with a 9-10% increase, but the parking charge is not. I'll just read them here. The Forum Sunday all-day parking charge is £4.30 from £1.70. It's a 152% increase. The Perry's Place is the worst, £6.70 from £1.70. It's going up £5 a day, 294% increase. Growing the local economy is incredibly important. We know Blueprint Horsham, when they have the meetings, free car parking is one of the things that they wanted within the town to help drive the local economy. I fear that this is a step too far on car parking charges on Sundays. I'm afraid I'm unable to support this. If you are taking them on block, I'm afraid I will have to be voting against. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to speak? Could you just allow me a minute to refer to the monitoring officer in respect of how we address your concerns, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Hodgson, do you actually have a proposal for, in respect to Sunday car parking charges, so that could be removed from the block vote and can be...
Yes, Chairman, if I've got a second in the room, I'm happy to recommend that item is referred back to the PDAC for further consideration and removed from tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Could you just give us a minute or so? Councillor Clark. Sorry, Councillor Clark, did you wish to speak? So I thought you saw you. Oh, thank you. Right, councillors, what we will now do is we will take each of the clauses of the recommendation and have a show of hands of each. When we reach the clause related to car parking charge increases on a Sunday, then if you could state the the amendment to that, then we will vote on that separately from the others. So I will now read out each of the Cabinet recommendations and we will vote by hand on each.
Point of order.
Sorry, sorry, thank you. Second, Councillor Buffy, do you wish to? Sorry, Councillor Franklin, apologies, you are the seconder. Do you wish to speak now on the
principle. Yes, I do, and thank you, and thanks for the, the points from the council here. Yes, I'm backing up this proposal. We have a duty in the council to act prudently, to make decisions that secure the continued delivery of essential services, but also to enable the delivery of all the other services and things that we provide for our residents. And as I say, we have the responsibility to make some decisions around that, and I feel very much that these decisions, proposals in this part of the agenda are completely justifiable and not unreasonable. Now, having said that, I fully accept that there are many people who need, when it comes to the discussion about parking, they need to use their cars to get into towns or to get into villages, to do their shopping or drop people off at school, etc. And that's an inevitable part of, it's an essential part of their life. And we have a culture really which is centred at the moment around the use of cars. So I fully recognise there are people for whom this is a bit of a hit. But, owning a car comes with expenses, insurance, tax, petrol, wear and tear, and parking. It is part of the aspect of using a car. But when it comes to the specifics of the increases here, I think that the 9% is justified on the basis of inflation. And I think when you come to the Sunday charges, and I think Councillor Hogman mentioned a figure of 156% increase, that is from a very low base, and it's still lower than all the other days of the week. And I was in town last Sunday, and Sunday is pretty much the busiest day of the week, perhaps with the exception of Saturday. It is now the norm that people will use cars and drive and park on Sundays as well as every other day of the week. So I think we've got to recognise that this is the world we live in now, and I fully support the motion and all the elements of it as they stand at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now extend the right of reply to Councillor Bainham in respect to clauses 2, 1, 2, 3 and 5, i.e. excluding clause 4, which relates to Sunday trading, Sunday charges. Sorry, an element of clause 4.
3 is not erased.
3 is government.
Thank you, Chairman. Given that there's been no opposition in the room to those particular clauses, bar the Sunday ones, which we can talk about a bit more, I don't think I have anything further to add, so just propose the recommendations as stated.
Okay, we will now vote on all excluding clause 4, which relates to Sunday parking charges.
Sorry, Chairman, I think some people have got a different agenda in the room. On my agenda, it's page 19, item 3. Specific recommend the council to increase parking charges from April 1st, 2025, as set out in Appendix 2. That is the item I'm objecting to. So it could be that you have a slightly different agenda.
Okay, so on my copy of the agenda here, I've got the first recommendation is to note the contents of the medium-term financial strategy. My first recommendation is to note the medium-term financial strategy. The second recommendation is to improve the introduction of new charges across the council car parks. The third recommendation is in relation to the garden waste. The fourth That's okay, it's fine, it's recommendation 3 then. Councillors are correct.
Is Appendix 2 just related to Sunday
No,
trading?
it contains an element of Sunday trading charges in it.
So, apologies.
Answers are correct. They've got the
Sorry,
papers.
apologies, the papers are different to those of the monitoring officer. So it is indeed the clause 3, which are the contents of Appendix 2, which we will exclude from this vote. So we are covering the recommendations 1, 2 and 4 in this vote. Apologies to you all. So all those in favour of approving recommendations 1, 2 and 4, please show. Thank you, that's a unanimous vote. So that motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Hobden, would you like to propose your amendment to the charges contained in clause 3 on that part of Appendix 2 to the papers?
Thank you, Chairman. I do understand it's difficult when you're balancing a budget, and I do have empathy because I've sat the other side of the table, and it's only fair to throw back to me if I was the chairman. Well, if I was the cabinet of finance, well, how would I make up that shortfall? But this administration has committed to doing some capital projects that need an increase in raising funds. My amendment is to refer item 3 from the cabinet papers back to the BDO for further consideration, as the charges are vastly above the level of inflation and not competitive with neighbouring towns.
Can I have a seconder to that motion? Thank you, Councillor Clark. As this is a referral to a committee, there will be no debate on this item. We will just vote. So, all those in favour of referring back to the committee, please show. Thank you. And any against? And are there any abstentions? Okay, the proposed motion has fallen. We now return to the original recommendations to vote. So recommendation 3, we now vote.
Point of order, Chairman. I believe
Sorry. Yes, sorry, apologies.
Additionally, I believe further debate is actually still possible once the amendment has fallen. And so does debate not take place before the right of reply?
Okay, I open. Yeah. Okay, so I open up. Councillor Circus.
Thank you, Chairman. When I was first a cabinet member here, I was a cabinet member with responsibility for parking, and I remember being assailed viciously by the Liberal Democrat opposition and by the County Times, because one or two of the charges went up by 40%. We're now looking at, and I rely on my colleague Councillor Hogben's mathematical calculation, we're talking about, for Sunday, 150%. But even in relation to other charges, one of the things we've been hearing a lot about in the national news is about the importance of optics. And what I would say is the optics of parking increases at this time of unparalleled cost of living crisis, with the implications, of course, for the local economy. The optics are not good. I also would like to mention you had an important civic service on Sunday. I wonder, so this increase of 150% would have hit a large number of people who attended that service, including people who came as representatives of other local authorities. So there's no consideration in any of this for the impact on local faith communities. So, as I say, I think 150% is absolutely appalling. I think the whole optics of this is appalling. I think it would have been better to have taken it back and reconsidered this item, but it hasn't. But at any rate, as far as I'm concerned, I shall be voting against this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Serkis. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. As briefly to supplement some of the information that was raised by Councillor Hogburn, I'm not in any way going to impugn his mathematical acumen, but as he specifically mentioned as a comparative point for County Mile and Crawley, it might be useful for members in the room to note that it currently has hourly parking charges on a Sunday, just as is proposed in the recommendation here. They are somewhat less expensive than the hourly charges from Monday to Saturday, as is proposed in the recommendation here. As somebody who, in my ordinary working life, operates a retail business in the centre of Crawley and whose customers therefore rely upon access to Sunday parking for commercial means, I have not seen any effect upon my business, or indeed experienced as somebody who, for convenience, worships on a Sunday occasionally in Crawley and uses the local NCP car parking to do so, any deleterious effects in the last several years. That is a personal observation. Nevertheless, I think it is useful for members to have regard to the fact that these recommendations do not in any way bring us out of step with what we might consider to be competitors to Horsham's offer commercially on a Sunday, nor do I believe that they will have a deleterious impact on the faith groups that Councillor Serkis has rightly shown some concern for. I think that this is an eminently sensible choice compared to the other, as Councillor Bainham has quite rightly pointed out, less palatable options that we would be faced with if we choose to ignore this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Boffin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A light on a few points. I'm grateful for Councillor Serkis's memory of the time when he was a cabinet member for parking. There may still actually be one of those Liberal Democrat members still as a member of this council now. So it's times change and we must change with them. Councillor Hogben also will go through talking about which recommendations we were wrong. Made a comment. I think some of us in the room have got a different agenda to others. I thought, how apposite. You see, the problem for me with the previous amendment, which has fallen, was a recommendation to send it back to PDAC. Now, I might have possibly had some sympathy for that, with that, if the last time this came to PDAG, there had actually been any objections to this proposal. And also, Councillor Serkis just thinks he's aghast at this proposal. He was strangely silent during his always reliable to be seen attendance at the cabinet meeting when these recommendations were put forward. We asked if there were any comments from other members present, and answer came there none. So I do sort of wonder what the other agenda that some members have might be. When it comes to optics, yeah, nobody likes delivering bad news, but I think when it comes to optics, what the public want to see is honesty, right? And the honesty that is on display here from this recommendation, I think, is there are valuable services which people rely on in this district, and those services need to be paid for. And I haven't heard any other proposals this evening on how that should be done, so I will be happily voting for this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Raby.
I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Serkis's comments about the cost of living, and I agree, we're still in the grip of a really tough time for a lot of our residents. And one of the biggest things that's hit our residents, our older residents, is the removing the winter fuel allowance. And one of the services we've been able to deliver, one of the things that we might have to cut if we had to lose over £100,000, is the support that we've provided to enable pensioners who are entitled to pension credit to claim it. And we've helped by having those services, by using that money to help our residents, to help over 50 pensioners who are entitled to pension credit but were not claiming, to claim it, which gets not just the winter fuel allowance, but we've calculated over their lifetimes that will add over £1 million to those residents. So if we're really worried about people suffering in the cost of living, then I really think that providing good quality services and not being forced to make cuts, because we are in a time when the budgets of councils are stretched, and nobody would be thinking of putting up £4 or £5 on a day parking if we didn't need to. And I think it's a prudent way of supporting all of our residents. If we're worried about the most vulnerable residents, then keeping our services going is the best way to support people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm supporting my colleagues on this, but I just wanted to make the point that quoting very large percentage figures on very small numbers is a scurrilous use of statistics. It can give you very good press because it sounds really dramatic, but this is not really dramatic. You could look at the percentage increase this is on the cost of running your car, and it really wouldn't be something that the members over there would be wanting to quote as a percentage term. You could also look at the percentage increase when that administration introduced Sunday charges. Well, it was an infinite percentage increase. It's a nonsense in some circumstances to be quoting very large percentage increases out of context, and it's really sad that that's what we're reduced to here. We should be looking at what we're doing with the money that we are going to be able to get from this parking increase, the way this is going to protect and improve services for our residents, giving them the things they need, and I will be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Just reiterate what Councillor Fletcher's statement there. We shouldn't be lost on the large percentage increase on small numbers, just as we sometimes confused by big numbers, thinking that we get a lot out of it. The important thing here is to understand if we don't do this, what is the impact? One thing I'd be interested to understand this time next year is what has been the percentage increase in parking fees, or the revenue from parking. Has it been, will it be more than 9%? If not, are we then seeing fewer people using the car park? And are we then in danger of keep increasing the parking because it's an easy option and fewer people using it, which would have an impact on our economic development for some of those stores in the high street? So I would be supportive of this motion. I think Councillor Fletcher made a very good point. This is a high percentage increase on a very small number. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chairman.
Point of order, Chairman. I believe Councillor Hogben has already spoken in this debate.
I don't think I have spoken in this particular debate.
On this debate as the previous one.
Chairman, I'll be very quick. All I wanted to say was that this, Councillor Circus said 150%. Some of these are 258%. So the Beat Exchange, Dem Road, Duke Square, they're all 250% increase. In Perry's Place goes up by £5 on a Sunday to £6.70. It's 294%. Coming back to Councillor Boffey, I was at the Finance PDAG on September the 9th. I've just looked through the minutes and this item wasn't discussed or referred to the PDAG. I hopefully, as an opposition council, I've been very supportive this evening. I've supported garden waste, I've supported all the other charges, and I haven't even objected to this one yet. I have merely stated that I have strenuous concerns about the level, the optics, and how this reads and how this compares with neighbouring towns. And I personally did not see that information, the data from neighbouring towns, how this is affected and how this is competitors. So I was happy to discuss this matter further, look into it with a possibility of supporting it further down the line. But as it stands, I'm unable to support it. To come back to Councillor Brooks, County Mail, I think it's £5.50 for 8 hours on a Sunday. We're proposing £6.70 for all day at Perry's Place on a Sunday. So we are significantly higher than Crawley's car parking charges. So I have genuine concerns. I didn't choose to vote this motion down. I voted against it. I tried to take it back to the PDAG so it could be discussed further. You mentioned about Cabinet. Councillor Circus, I did listen to the overview and scrutiny minutes, and he did raise serious concerns to this overview and scrutiny. So I would challenge as to whether Cabinet did listen to anything that overview and scrutiny said about this item when it was on the agenda. So thank you for your time, Chairman. I'll call it a day there.
Thank you. Right, I now extend the right to reply to Councillor Bainham.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Since we're talking about percentages, I'll probably add a few bits to that as well. Of course, you can pick your percentages pretty well to suit your point, and the percentages that Councillor Hogben is picking is for those people who will stay all day in the car park. Of course, most people don't stay all day in the car park. If you're going there for a short period of time, up to an hour, for example, you'll see in some of the car parks it's actually a reduction. But clearly we want to raise more income from the car parks. Our projection on use, and we haven't seen drops in use previously in other councils where this has happened, so we're not expecting any significant drop of use in the long term. But we anticipate raising £134,000 extra due to the Sunday charges, which is above a figure of 300,000 that they raise at the moment. So that's an increase of 45%. So that is the real increase that people will pay over what they're paying now. Now, think of some other points here. It costs the same to run and maintain car parks on a Sunday as any other day of the week. In fact, it's slightly more, since car park staff receive additional compensation for Sunday working. But we currently run Sundays at a loss. Now, this means that every council taxpayer across this district is effectively subsidising those using the town car parks on Sundays. That is neither fair nor reasonable. If we have money to subsidise, then it shouldn't be going on people who are not necessarily the best beneficiaries of such subsidies. And, you know, for all the huffing and puffing that goes on, Conservative opposition members have not put forward any credible alternative proposals. Why not? I suspect that deep down they know that we're actually doing the right thing. Not only for this council, but more importantly for the 150,000 people who live here. And finally, as a part, you mentioned the PDAGs. Well, it actually went to the PDAG twice, and there were the fact that people decided not to talk about it or discuss it or raise it is not my fault as chair of that PDAG, because I presented the papers as I've done previously. Anyway, so my final point is I have no hesitation in proposing the recommendation that's set out in the paper to Council.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now put this to the vote. For clarification, we are now voting to approve the recommendations to Council to increase the price of car parking charges from the 1st of April 2025 as set out in Appendix 2, i.e. Clause 3. All those in favour of approving the recommendation, please show. And any against? Eight against. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We'll now move on to item 6B on page 20 of your packs, residential property portfolio, housing contents. And I invite Councillor Sam Raby to speak on this motion.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks full council authority to submit applications to the Secretary of State to facilitate the letting of the council's residential properties. By way of background, the council owns the freehold of several properties which it lets to its housing company on short leases for onward rental to tenants under an assured short-hold tenancy agreement. The law provides that the Secretary of State's consent is required to certain disposals, including, for example, a lease to the council's housing company. That said, the Secretary of State has issued a series of general consents negating the requirement to obtain specific consent upon which the council ordinarily relies. This general consent allows the council to let once, but any subsequent consecutive lets require specific Secretary of State approval. Therefore, there will come a time when the council needs to renew its leases to the housing company, and specific Secretary of State consent will be required. As such, this report seeks advance authority to apply to the Secretary of State for specific consent as and when required in the future. In addition, I would mention that the council is buying other residential properties, and we will return to full council for approval to make the required applications in respect of those properties in the near future too. I therefore put before you the recommendations contained in the report and hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. I want to open up to the floor to debate. Silence. I now invite the Councillor Knowles as the second motion.
I don't have anything further to add, thank you.
Councillor Raby.
No need to say any more, let's vote now.
So we'll now put it to a vote. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on page 20 of the agenda, please show. The motion is carried unanimously. Now move on to item 7, the appointment of the Independent Remuneration Panel, and I invite the Chief Executive to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. The Council is required to appoint an independent remuneration panel of at least 3 members. The chair of the panel was appointed in December 2020, and as such, his appointment is due to expire. The other panel members were appointed in 2022 and earlier this year. All panel members are happy to continue, and the full review of members' allowances is due to be reported to the Council meeting in February. The report therefore proposes that the panel members are all reappointed for a 4-year period, which will ensure that their terms on the panel will all expire at the same date. Thank you.
Is there a proposer for this motion? Councillor Boffey. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Serkis. I'm assuming that no one wishes to speak on this item. So all those in favour of approving the recommendations on pages 21 to 24 of the agenda, please show. The motion is carried unanimously. We now move on to reports from representatives. Does any member who represents the council or an outside body wish to make a report? Councillor Bainham.
Thank you, Chairman. I represent this council on the Sussex Police and Crime Panel, and in this capacity, on the 27th of September last, I chaired the confirmation hearing for the reappointment of Mrs. Jo Shiner as Chief Constable of Sussex Police. Mrs. Shiner had previously formally asked the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner to enact the Retire and Rejoin scheme available for all officers as per the provisions of police regulations. The Commissioner, Mrs. Katie Bourne, accepted the request subject to the completion of a confirmation process by the Police and Crime Panel. Mrs. Shiner appeared before the panel and was questioned at some considerable length by members on her suitability to continue in the role. In the following closed session, members were agreed that Mrs. Shiner had given a very strong performance in the hearing, and the decision to confirm her reappointment was unanimous. She will now continue in her role as Chief Constable until the 10th of August 2027.
Thank you. Do we have any other representatives who wish to speak? We will now therefore move on to item 9 on the agenda, notices of motion, of which there are none. Moving now on to item 10.1, a member's question on notice. I invite Philip Serkis.
Thank you, Chairman.
You have 2 minutes to ask your question.
Right. Our residents may find it very unsatisfactory that it is not a legal requirement for restaurants in the district and elsewhere in the UK to display the food hygiene rating score, despite this being a legal requirement in Northern Ireland and in Wales. Will the Cabinet member therefore ensure that this issue is raised directly with the relevant government department and with the local government association and the district council network to encourage a joint campaign to make the display of the food hygiene rating scores obligatory in the interests of our residents as consumers in these establishments?
Thank you. I now ask Councillor Mercer. You have 2 minutes to respond to the question.
Thank you, Chairman. My first instinct when I read this question was simply to say yes. But I felt that would be disrespectful to Councillor Serkis. It's a genuine question and an important one. Displaying food hygiene rating scores has been mandatory in Northern Ireland since 2011 and in Wales since 2013. And it's my understanding that England was supposed to follow suit, but to do this, government had to bring legislation before Parliament. And regrettably, this was deferred several times due to more pressing issues, such as Brexit, COVID, general elections, etc. However, I am aware the Food Standards Agency is committed to pressing the case for mandatory display in England. And furthermore, our own environmental health officers, as part of the Sussex Food Liaison Group, fully support mandatory display and have made the case to the Food Standards Agency on several occasions over the years. From my discussions with them, I believe there's clear evidence from research into the scheme in Wales and Northern Ireland, that overall most businesses are incentivised to maintain or improve their food hygiene rating. And I'm convinced, and have been for some time, that the display of their rating has a range of positive impacts on customer perceptions of those businesses. So in summary, I support the displaying of ratings so that customers can make an informed choice, and will seek to promote this, making this mandatory through the appropriate channels as requested.
Thank you. Councillor Circus, do you wish to make a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, thanks. My colleague, Councillor Vickers, pointed out to me that there'd been some publicity in the local news, and I think perhaps on the national news, that there are statements that some traders are putting up completely bogus hygiene rating statements. And I would like to ask, and maybe this is one for my learned friend, the monitoring officer, to tell us whether we have the power as an authority to take firm action against any trader who puts up a bogus hygiene rating score, or is it a matter for, say, county trading standards?
Thank you, Councillor Circus. I would think it likely a matter for county trading standards, but have to verify whether we have the powers in statute to allow us to take action against any companies or individuals who are not acting as they should do.
Thank you.
Can I make a statement, yes?
Sorry, Councillor Mercer, do you wish to respond to the supplementary?
Just to say that I meet with the environmental health officers regularly. We have discussed this matter, not the false notices, but the fact that the display issue. I have no doubt that they would be reporting to me if this were happening in Horsham, because it would have come up in those discussions, and there has been no such report. So although we may not have the statutory responsibility and right to tell them to take them down, because I do think that may well be a trading standards issue, we will know if it happens, and we will see what we can do about it.
Thank you. Councillor Circus, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The more I thought about this issue, the more I thought there were a number of strands to this issue. One occurred to me at the community safety briefing on Monday, which is to ask the question whether perhaps our community wardens could be given some sort of role, even if it's to be the ears and eyes of other enforcement bodies. So I'm wondering whether it would make sense, it seems to me, to do an all-round review of this subject to maximise what we as an authority can do, because I believe I'm right in saying there is a growing problem of food poisoning, of E. coli poisoning, and a lot of it is related to food and restaurants, and therefore I think, since we care about our residents, we should give a top priority to seeing that we do as much as we can to pursue this issue in the interest of our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Circus. For the purpose of members, there is no debate on this motion. I now move on to the question from...
Sorry, can I just make a point, please?
No.
There are no wardens in North Horsham, so we can't rely on the wardens to do...
Oh, you can't... Sorry. Moving on now to a question from Roger Knoll. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chairman.
2 minutes.
I hear you say 2 minutes, so I'll be as quick as possible. It's quite a long question. I'm starting now. I ask the Cabinet Member for Climate Action and Nature Recovery to take note of the following comments on Crateman's Farm in Calford and write to Natural England to request that they designate this site as a priority habitat lowland meadow.
By way of background, Crateman's Farm is a haven for wildlife where no pesticides, herbicides or fertilisers have been used for over 60 years. This is known as unimproved grassland and contains many species of insects and invertebrates. It lies directly in the path of the proposed Rampion 2 cable route, as well as the proposed haul road and substation. These fields, though currently undesignated as a site of special scientific interest, or SSI, were reported by Perry Hocking, senior ecologist at Arborwild, to be designated a priority habitat lowland meadow. He reports that Crateman's Farm had better conditions than the SSI site at Sapperton Meadows in East Sussex, saying that Sapperton was nowhere near as impressive in terms of sward height and diversity. This undisturbed habitat has been established around the flooding along the Calfold stream and its tributaries. The decades-old scrub here supports a dense population of endangered wildlife, such as nightingales, cuckoos, crested newts, adders, slowworms, grass snakes and skylarks. In addition, water voles and otters have been found to live in the tributaries, which are also flanked with scrub. In this small area, there are more nightingale territories than within the RSPB site at Pulborough Brooks, and Crateman's holds a denser population of nightingales than at Knepp. Charles Flower, environmentalist and ecologist at the Wildflower Consultancy, reports that if the ancient blackthorn is removed, any new hedge planting will be grazed off by muntjac unless it is fenced to incredibly high standards. Charles Flower also reports that the blackthorn in its present form is irreplaceable, as it will take at least 30 years to regrow to its current density. Naturalists agree that when the blackthorn scrub goes, the nightingales will go with it and never return. Horsham district has few SSI or priority habitat sites, so tonight I'm asking for a designation of this site to become a priority habitat lowland meadow. This would be in accordance with Biodiversity 2020.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry?
Sorry, you've had 2 minutes, 43 seconds.
I've had my 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn, do you wish to respond?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Noel. As you are aware, the proposed Rampion scheme includes proposals to install an electricity cable through the Crateman's farmland. The impact of these proposals on this site has been considered in detail as part of the development consent order process, which will determine whether the scheme can proceed.
Chairman, could the speaker move the mic closer to the
Sorry. Shall I start again? Yep, no problem. The proposed Rampion scheme includes proposals to install an electricity cable through the Crateman's farmland. The impact of these proposals on this site has been considered in detail as part of the development consent order process, which will determine whether the scheme can proceed or not. The outcome will be determined by the Secretary of State and not Horsham District Council nor Natural England, both of whom are statutory consultees. Natural England are therefore fully aware of this issue in its statutory role. Natural England has therefore already had an opportunity to decide to update of the priority habitat inventory, having regard to the evidence submitted. Natural England's advice on terrestrial ecology to the examining authority in relation to Crateman's Farm was principally to timescale to habitat reinstatement as part of the applicant's commitment in the draft DCO, to remediation of temporary habitat loss, and Natural England was satisfied that this was to be resolved pre-construction at detailed design stage. They therefore do not have any outstanding objections to the proposal subject to these conditions being met. And I should say that these will be subject to monitoring should the scheme gain consent. Whilst I can understand the concerns in relation to this site, ultimately, whether or not the scheme proceeds, there are measures in place that would ensure the long-term integrity of the site, whether or not it has official designated status. I am therefore not of the view that it is necessary to write to Natural England to request designation of the land in question, as it has been in the gift of Natural England to initiate this process already. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Null. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Knoll, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. In that case, I would ask you to write to Rampion to request that instead of the cable route trenching, which is scheduled to go straight through the fields, that the cable route is either changed or HDD drilling is put in, which is horizontal directional drilling, so it can go underneath this biodiverse rich site. Rampion 2 is already proposing in other sensitive sites, especially down at the coastal end of the cable route, where it is going to be drilled directly horizontally underneath the beach, underneath the farm, and underneath all the land up to the river. So if they can do that down at the beach end of the cable route, they can surely do it through a single farm with two significantly biodiverse fields.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Horsham District Council, in its submission to the examination, actually reflected the Arbor Weald Survey, the Arbor Weald Survey's own position in its conclusion that the most desirable option would be for the impact of the development to be reduced by undertaking the cable laying with horizontal directional drilling. And that does mean, of course, that the cable laying does not go through but goes underneath. However, that is the extent that Horsham District Council is able to recommend, as it does not have an arbitrary role in this national infrastructure project. Trenchless crossing may well be instructed as part of the DCO order, but it is not for Horsham District Council to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll, do you wish to make a final statement in response?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I do. In that case, thank you very much, Councillor Backbone, for explaining our responsibilities and the capabilities of the Council. However, I would like to revisit this once we see what happens with the final Rampion 2 route. If it's still going through these very sensitive areas, then I will be asking further questions of you to see if you can help in any way whatsoever. But thank you very much for your reply. I do appreciate it, and thank you again to everyone that's helped for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors will be aware that the local plan examination is due to take place in this building throughout December and January. Although the business for the day should be concluded prior to 6 p.m, arrangements will need to be made at the conclusion of proceedings to set up for the council meeting on the 11th of December. I therefore propose that the council meeting on the 11th of December begins at 18:30, 6:30 p.m. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Do you all agree? Thank you. We now move on to item 12, paid policy implications of a service review. Council are asked to approve the recommendations contained within the exempt report included in the agenda pack. I therefore move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public are excluded from the meeting for the debate and consideration of this item, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act by virtue of paragraphs 1, 2 and 3, information relating to any individual, information which is likely to reveal the identity of an individual, and information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. The public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you. wait whilst we reopen. Thank you. All those in favour of approving the recommendations on pages 25 to 28 of the agenda, please show. The motion is carried unanimously. This concludes the business of the meeting, and I therefore declare the meeting closed. Thank you all very much indeed.